Hey, everyone. Welcome into another edition of Buckeyes Live right here, the voice of college football. Appreciate you all being here. This is typically the time, but please subscribe, hit that bell for the notifications to know when we go live. We're coordinating 4 schedules here, so it can't always be Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time, but we appreciate you being here. Comments and questions go in the live chat. Please consider the super chat as well, and we will do it up here for the next 60 with Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts 247 Sports. We appreciate Steve. He's joined us forever. So is Tony Gerdeman. Buckeye Huddle. Buckeye Weekly is the podcast. And College Football Playbook. That's the venture right here on YouTube. So get on over there as well. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Doing good. Well.
So let's start with that scrimmage on Saturday, Steve. I'll leave it in your lap in regards to what you got out of the action on the field.
Oh, we got to watch practice on Saturday, and it was really outstanding from our standpoint to be able to go and watch. They probably ran 100 plays of 11 on 11, so you can glean quite a bit, from that. I thought the quarterback's very sharp. I didn't see any interceptions that they threw in 7-on-7 or 11-on-11 that I could recall. It didn't look so good in the red zone, trying to score from the 5-10 yard line. Throwing the football didn't work out very well. I think there was only one touchdown. It was by some piker named Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, caught a touchdown. It looked to me, and Tony, I could be wrong, but it looked to me like Caleb Brown may have also caught a touchdown down there, but maybe they didn't give it to him. I don't know. But
that was the only touchdown I remember down there was to Caleb Brown.
Yeah, I thought the first play was Devin Brown to Marvin Harrison, but I could be wrong. So maybe they waved off the one to Harrison. I don't know. So that's kind of a small, we're not going to dwell on any one thing here because it was just one day out of 15 that they practiced this spring. And I think that, again, no Travion Henderson, no Emeka Egbuka, no Julian Fleming, 3 guys who are going to be kind of the guts of the offense, along with Marvin Harrison Jr. and the quarterbacks. So you kind of have to take some of it with a grain of salt. I thought offensive line play was pretty good. Looks to me like Carson Hinsman is the guy at center with Victor Cutler kind of battling him. I think that the right tackle is wide open. Tegra Toshbola is there, as is Zen Mahalski. I thought on the whole that they did pretty well, although the line did give up a few sacks here and there. And again, it could have been second team, that was in there at times when some of those things happen. I mean, things move awfully fast, so it's kind of hard to chronicle who sacked the quarterback and who didn't block the guy who sacked the quarterback. When you don't have instant replay, makes it a little bit more difficult. But I thought on the whole, there were a lot of young guys who flashed. I thought C.J. Hicks on defense had a pretty good day. Steele Chambers, I thought, was pretty good. Kenyatta Jackson, young defensive end, played pretty well. Giving up some big plays. I thought Jordan Hancock struggled a little bit in coverage at corner. Davison Igbenison and Denzel Burke looked to be the best 2 corners on the field, to my way of looking at it. Those are probably a lot of the highlights that I had. I'm sure these guys were there also and filed their own practice reports, but I think those were some of the high points. I thought Jack Sawyer was okay at defensive end. He may have had a sack or 2. Styles, pretty good. That was a lot of what I saw. I'll throw it open though and I'll hang up and listen to what everybody else.
We will note the entry of one Kevin Noon here from Buckeye Huddle, of course. We appreciate Kevin being here. Tony, we'll leave it to you next.
Thanks, Mark. First time, long time. I thought what my main takeaway was how mobile Kyle McCord was, how much he moved around and making plays, and not necessarily running for first downs because you're wearing a black jersey. So if you get touched, you're down. But moving in the pocket, scrambling a little bit, making plays on scramble plays, receivers coming back to him. Noah Rogers had a big 45-yard connection on a scramble play, and I was just impressed at how accurate he was on the move as well. I thought both quarterbacks did really well. The red zone, there were struggles, but as Steve said, there were no interceptions. So to me, that's, at least you're not turning it over down there. As Jim Tressel said, any drive that ends in a kick is a good drive, that sort of thing. Kenyatta Jackson was the guy who flashed, and he was tired at the end, but Larry Johnson kept him out there because they wanted him to work through that stuff. And so he was impressive. Davis Igbinosun, with his length, is able to just kind of like a spider. He knocked one pass down to Carnell Tate that Carnell Tate basically had him boxed out, and Davis Igbinosun was able to reach over with his long arms and knock it down. But it was always interesting to see where Sonny Styles would be lined up because he's a versatile guy, and they still got to figure him out. But I won't take up too much of Kevin's thoughts.
Well, we do consider you, Tony, to be the resident expert on anything Davis Igbinosun performs on the field. Ever since I saw that reel you put together on Twitter, I was like, man, Tony is the guy breaking this guy down every play by play. So.
And honestly, I thought he's been looking better than a lot of what we saw at Ole Miss so far.
Very good. Kevin, what did you take from Saturday?
Yeah, I got here a little late, so I don't want to be redundant, so I'll be pretty quick. Over here, it's Wild Kingdom by Mutual of Omaha with puppies and kittens running around and barking and doing stupid stuff. So if I end up on mute, it's because I'm trying to spare everybody all of the fights that are going on here. But I think that I focus on players that I've not seen out there as much before, more so than being like, okay, well, Denzel Burke did this and so on and so forth. Noticed a lot of great plays and early action by Gabe Powers, somebody that we'd not seen a ton of last year. Is he going to be able to pass up a Steel Chambers or Tommy Eichenberg? No, but I mean, it was good seeing him out there. Carnell Tate obviously was somebody who lost his black stripe after the scrimmage. He looked really good. I'm really curious to see what Jaden Ballard is going to be in terms of in the system this year. Is Jaden Ballard going to be able to cut into some of the reps that we were used to seeing Julian Fleming get? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I did not get to go to interviews on the day that Brian Hartline spoke, but it sounded like the word on the street was it's a matter of when, not if, for Jaden Ballard. He's somebody who really kind of caught my eye. And then, of course, everybody just wants to talk about the quarterbacks. And I remind everybody, we saw one practice, 1 of 15. That's the only one that we've seen anything of consequence more than them stretching and just handing the balls off to the running backs. And what I saw that day, Kyle McCord looked a little bit better than Devin Brown. I don't think Ohio State really has a bad decision between either of the two quarterbacks, but in that day, I think Kyle McCord looked a little bit better. Again, in indoor practice, I mean, a lot of stuff going on. I'm not going to hook my wagon to practice number 5 or practice number 6, whatever it may have been, and say that this is how the decision's going to go. But in that moment in time, I liked McCord a little bit better.
Well, Kevin, while we're handing out resident roles, you would be Marlon Perkins, of course, then. So we'll keep it with you. So you didn't hear from Hartline. You heard from Jim Knowles, correct?
I did not make it to practice. I had the worst way to spend a sick day is actually being sick, and I was actually sick. So no, I didn't. I watched a little bit of the videos, but I was not there.
Well, anything between those two, and especially I was just going to ask about Knowles in particular. I can't imagine these coordinators meet with the media how often?
Once every few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, during the season we were getting Knowles weekly or whatever, but we don't get to hear from the coordinators a ton, especially during spring when it's kind of we're going to try and cycle you through all of the position coaches and maybe you'll hear from the coordinators a little bit more.
Because I would just think with Jim Knowles in particular, there would just be this thread of questioning, even if it was veiled, just trying to get to the heart of, is this going to get fixed? What are you doing to fix this?
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think that, something that's certainly on the table is there going to be instances where there's going to be 3 corners and 2 safeties out there, and that third corner is going to play nickel. And, what's that going to be like? I mean, what is, for me, I think one of the biggest things in kind of getting away from maybe what Knowles said, or at least I didn't hear him talk about it, but, we've talked about Jack Sawyer moving to end and not having to play the Jack role. And what will Mitchell Melton, once he's able to return and do actual work with the team as opposed to individual work, what will he look like in that Jack role? What will CJ Hicks be able to move into that role? What is that going to be like? But I really like the idea of Jack Sawyer being more of that rush end, having the tandem of him and JT Tuimoloau out there trying to get to the quarterback and do things like that, as opposed to having Jack Sawyer playing with the parking brake on, is essentially what it kind of fell into than what we may have seen at various points last year. And that's because of his responsibilities were very different than what people see him lining up kind of on the end, and they're like, "What? We'll get the quarterback, go do this." Well, that wasn't his role. Well, once you change that, I think that's going to be a difference maker.
I believe there's an obvious answer to the question presented by Darren, but I will serve it up to you guys to be more explicit in differentiating Devin Brown's skill set versus Kyle McCord.
It seems to me that Brown has a very strong arm. He can throw the deep ball, really with great accuracy and great arm strength. I don't know if we have a full gauge on his command of the finer points of the offense. There was one play in the scrimmage, and I forget who I was standing next to, and the ball came out real hot from him, and it kind of glanced off. It was maybe a little high over it went off the receiver's, outstretched hand. It's kind of like sometimes you have to take a little bit off the fastball, and he's got to learn the touch maybe a little bit, that because you got to complete those balls when the guys are running wide open across the field. So to me, that is the smallest, thing that if that's the worst thing this guy needs to work on, then so be it. He is not a bad player. So let's debunk any notion that, this is an open and shut thing. I think that it's McCord's job probably to lose, but Brown's a pretty good player too, in my opinion.
Yeah, and in terms of what he brings that McCord doesn't, he's more mobile, and that's what all of the coaches will tell you is he can do more with his legs. But that's a statement on Brown, not necessarily McCord, because McCord is mobile, can do, like I said, that was what impressed me most, is just how mobile he was. But they are different in that way, and Brown can certainly do the running that that people wish CJ Stroud would have done. But I think so can Kyle McCord.
Talking Buckeyes with all of you every Wednesday, typically. Again, subscribe and hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live, because sometimes we got to switch it up. But this is our typical landing spot, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time.
Mark, can I ask you something?
Sure.
Because I'm just seeing that, Steve was talking about the throw that was too hot, and then Darren Graham mentions, he Joe Miltoned it. Am I don't know what you're seeing nationally, but having watched Joe Milton at Michigan, I cannot buy Tennessee as any kind of threat if he is their quarterback. Now, this is a Jim Harbaugh thing, and maybe he's gotten away from Jim Harbaugh. He's with Josh Heupel now, and he's good. But when you do your shows and you're talking to people from all over and fans from all over, are people expecting Joe Milton to be Hendon Hooker?
Okay, well, my take on it is my first warning sign was Joe Milton completed like 45% of his passes in high school, and I thought, my goodness, are his receivers that bad that they drop that, to complete that against that type of competition? So then, we all saw what we saw at Michigan, which was just he was pretty clueless out there, just to be blunt and brief about it. And then he goes to Tennessee. I remember one series in particular that was crucial against Ole Miss, where Hooker had to leave the game. He had left the game earlier, but Tennessee had the opportunity to beat a good Ole Miss team at home a couple of years ago. And Joe Milton was, again, he made some awful decisions. And that's the game that he either ran out of bounds with no time left. I believe he ran out of bounds with no time left. They're in the red zone, needing a touchdown to win the game. He just ran the ball out of bounds. There was no time left on the clock. So I had a certain perception of Joe Milton leading into last season. He played well in mop-up duty, nothing that was meaningful. Then he gets the call, of course, in the bowl game, and he played well. And I got to say, my evaluation of him in that game was he's a pretty capable quarterback based on just one evaluation against a pretty good Clemson defense. But they're talking about Joe Milton like they're starting to pick apart what Hendon Hooker did wrong, which I didn't see a whole lot of myself. Guys that's throwing like 30-some touchdowns and 2 picks 2 consecutive years. But looking for Joe Milton to be, dare I say, an upgrade? I don't see it.
I maybe I saw too much of him at Michigan, and then I didn't watch. I don't know if I even watched the Clemson game, but I'm looking the numbers. 250 yards, 3 touchdowns, but I think they're taking a step back because Hendon Hooker was really, really good when he was healthy. Sorry to derail things.
Yeah, he was my Heisman guy at the point that he got hurt, certainly last season. I thought he was the best quarterback in America, at least in terms of production, not NFL ceiling or anything like that. All right. Yes, Knowles and Hartline in front of the media. Steve, what did you take from those conversations?
I sat in mostly with Hartline, so I was filming Hartline, so I really didn't listen much in on Knowles. I know that one of the questions that came up was in obvious passing situations, instead of playing 2 cornerbacks and 3 safeties, would you consider having a third cornerback on the field? And Jim Knowles said yes. And as we know, some of the big hits that have happened have occurred against some of the safeties, with Cam Martinez and Lathan Ransom coming to mind pretty quickly from a couple of games last year. So, and not to knock on those guys in particular, but had a cover player been in those positions, perhaps maybe it would have gone differently. I think the issue has been in a lot of those late season games last year, they only had 2 healthy cover players, talking about Denzel Burke and Cam Brown. You really didn't have, when they were in and out of the lineup, you really didn't have more than 2 corners at your availability. So hopefully this year, with Davison and Bennison in there, Jair Brown, Ryan Turner, maybe they're trying to bring some other guys along that they can go to playing 3 corners at one time. So to me, that was kind of interesting. With Hartline, it was a lot about the play calling mechanism, and this was the scrimmage on Saturday was a departure because they scripted a lot of the plays, I think, for, let's say, situational on the goal line and 3rd down. But they also put the ball down on the 25-yard line and said, go. And they had whatever unit it was, the first team run a play. And if they got the first down, well, now it's first down, you keep going. And you kept going until you ran out of downs. Or if they got close to the end zone, maybe they'd kick a field goal or they'd punch it into the end zone a few times. Well, what was going on was Brian Hartline was initiating the play call. Justin Fry was on a headset, as were some of the graduate assistants and the quarterbacks, the backup or the walk-on quarterbacks who signal in the plays. And so you had the full-blown mechanism of him calling the plays. And he was asked how that went. I thought by and large it seemed to be pretty smooth. I think the issue that they have is they've only had 5 or 6 practices, and you had cases where you had absolute true freshmen out there running around. It was clear that at various moments they had no idea what they were supposed to do. And that created a little bit of frustration, I thought, for Justin Fry with some of his offensive linemen and Brian Hartline, as the coordinator, and his young wide receivers like Bryson Rogers, Noah Rogers, Carnell Tate out there running around. But I think that is going to take care of itself over time as they have more and more practices. The guys will actually immerse themselves in their responsibilities, and it is a very intricate offense. I mean, you could get lost in the terminology and the formations and the everything that goes with it. So to me, it was a good start. He said he's glad that in his third year that Jaden Ballard is starting to come on. That was good to hear. Likes what he's seen so far out of Carnell Tate and Bryson Rogers and Noah Rogers. And, it's pretty obvious that those guys are pushing their way into the 2 deep. It seems to me, instead of playing just 4 wide receivers like he did most of last year, he's now says he's trusting 5 or 6 guys. And I think Ballard's probably one of them that's pushed his way into that group. So, last thing I'll say is, to me, that is a good thing, that if they're able to mix and match the reps for those top 4 guys at the end of games, Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka in particular could be fresh to beat, tired DBs in the fourth quarter of a close game. So that's kind of a thing that I was looking for. So that's kind of what I gleaned from both of them.
Tony, anything else out of you in regards to those two?
And Hartline was asked, will you play more? He's like, I feel good about 6 or going 6 or 7 deep. And he said the 4, 5, 6 are a lot better than they were last year. And so I think, that entails that's maybe Carnell Tate in there, perhaps Noah Rogers. Carnell Tate, of course, loses his black stripe after Saturday's scrimmage, the earliest freshman to ever do that since Urban Meyer started the thing in 2012. Took him 5 practices to get his black stripe off. And when I asked Hartline about that yesterday, he said he's done everything right since he stepped on campus. He's got straight A's. When he makes a mistake, he corrects it, and everything you ask him to do, he's done. And so, Hartline didn't want to say he was surprised. It's a little earlier than he thought it would be, but very happy with him. I think the 3 corners thing is interesting to me because, Steve, like the examples you gave of Cam Martinez and Lathan Ransom, like that's Lathan Ransom is going to be out there regardless because he's the strong safety. So another corner isn't going to affect that. Cam Martinez wasn't as good as Tanner McAllister last year, and I think that was more of a Cam Martinez thing. And that nickel is always going to be more corner-like, but he also does need to have some safety tendencies because with the shift of the offense, that nickel then becomes a deep safety. And so it's not just about covering it. There's several other things involved there. I think what they're looking at more maybe is on 3rd and longs and certain passing situations. Yeah, you maybe you go with another corner, but they still have questions about who that nickel is going to be. Is it going to be Cam Martinez? Is it going to be Jihad Carter? And then how much is it going to be a 3rd corner? And then does that become a dime? Basically, you keep that nickel in, but then you also bring in a corner and you take Tommy Eichenberg or Steel Chambers off the field. So I think that they're still working a lot on that. But they've got seemingly 4 corners that they like. And so the more you can get them on the field, I think is what something else that Jim Knowles said, the more you can get those guys on the field, the better they're going to be when they're out wide as well, the more experience they get. Jordan Hancock gave up 2 big touchdowns in that practice, 1 to Marvin Harrison. Like, is anybody gonna blame him for giving up a touchdown to Marvin Harrison? But he was really good in the red zone as well. So it was unfortunate that he had some ups and downs there. Denzel Burke just remains consistent, and I think Jair Brown continues to be consistent as well. And so like I said, they've got 4 guys that they feel pretty good about, and right now it's it's still every time we see them, it's Denzel Burke and Jordan Hancock running with the ones. They mix in the other guys, but it's always those two to start. But I won't be surprised to see 3 or 4 corners on the field in the game this year for the Buckeyes.
We've talked defensive secondary shortcomings a zillion times. You guys talk this stuff every day. So you guys have addressed this from every conceivable angle. You can talk, has the recruiting been as good in the defensive backfield as it was during the heyday of Urban Meyer? Are these guys not being coached and developed? Are they just, I don't want to call them busts by any stretch of the imagination, but underachieving versus their recruiting ranking? The Knowles defense, the scheme, the various schemes of the coordinators before Knowles. Has anyone ever addressed the dynamic of bringing in Eliano and Walton and their coaching styles and approach in dealing strictly with the secondary versus what Jim Knowles wants them to accomplish and what he's tasked them to do? What are the thoughts on why this, who has really played well in this secondary since 2019? I guess Denzel Burke did for 1 year. But it's just been a underachieving group for quite some time now.
Yeah, I know that one thing that's happened is that they have put the corners and safeties together in some regards with meetings so that everybody can be on the same page. I mean, that is half your defense, almost 5 guys working together in concert. And I think that's been important is Tim Walton and Perry Eliano are linked at the hip, so to speak, in coaching that whole secondary unit. So they cross-train, safeties and corners, et cetera. So to me, I think that's a positive development. That may not have happened as much in year one. It may have been a thing that they saw had to be rectified. I agree with you. I think that it can get better. I think it will get better. I think that the talent level is going up. Igbenison mixed right in, looked like he belonged. First time I ever saw him, in person. So I think it's going to get better. Jihad Carter, I think the Syracuse transfer seems like he's going to be a pretty good addition at safety. Only thing I would say is, again, 100 plays of 11 on 11, probably 20, 30 plays of 7 on 7. All those passes in the air, and I didn't see one interception, not the entire day. I saw a lot of passes got broken up, but to me, you can take it up 1 notch, but to get it where it needs to be, 2 notches better, to where you can definitely call yourselves the best in America, as they have purported to be, lo these many years, BIA or whatever their little thing is. You need to start intercepting passes again and changing the game and stopping the opponent cold and getting the ball back for the offense, scoring on defense. What a novel concept that would have been. So that's some of my thoughts.
It is interesting. There are no – did they put the ball on the ground at all either? Like, I don't remember any –
No fumbles.
Any
no
turnovers.
Fumbles.
So
ball security was outstanding. And a lot of young guys, a lot of freshmen, a lot of sophomores out there with the ball in their hands. And Dallan Hayden, if anybody can tell me what the shortcoming was with Dallan Hayden, why he didn't get 15 carries to help him beat Michigan last November,
Steve,
I'm still waiting.
No.
Still waiting on that explanation.
You and a million of us.
And Dallan Hayden's another guy who looks really good this spring, and he's bigger. He's noticeably bigger and stronger. And I keep going back to, I wonder how he's going to handle this year when he's very unlikely to get as many carries as he had last year. And so this is going to be maybe a trying year for him with Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams ahead of him. And also Ohio State wanting to get Evan Pryor involved. And also Chip Trainum looks really good as well. Also, they might want to do some things with Xavier Johnson and Emeka Egbuka carrying the ball. So I mean, there's so many playmakers that they can use, and it's going to take away touches from everybody. And I hope he's prepared to handle, 100 touches last year, maybe 60 or 70 this year, something like that.
Coach Hartline made a comment that they look at Xavier Johnson as an outstanding wide receiver and outstanding running back. And I think that was borne out there in the late season games when he was getting some carries as well. So I think that you're going to see him in a hybrid role where you line up with him in the slot or split out wide, and he comes and makes a shift at the absolute last second, and you catch the opponent. Maybe you're showing empty, and then he comes and they empty out the box, and then he comes and receives some type of a handoff, maybe as a motion man, coming as a reverse, or coming in and lining up for a second or two in the backfield before the snap. So to me, I think that is an area that they are going to pursue pretty heavily. I didn't see that a lot in the scrimmage, so it's not like I'm spilling the state secrets or anything. Ryan Hartline basically said that they're going to explore different ways to get that cat the ball in wide open spaces, which I think can only be a good thing.
I'll let Kevin talk after I say this. It's like they're going back to the future. They could with the H-back position, getting them more involved in the running game because it worked for them last year with Xavier Johnson.
Yeah, I just got back, so I don't know what I'm supposed to be talking about.
I was just going to let you talk. It's been a while.
Well, it has been a while, but I was having to break up fights between cats and dogs living together. It's been a challenge over here. I was under the impression my wife was working from home today. I'm like, this will be great. I'll be able to get a Mark show. There'll be no issues. I can work up in my office. I'm downstairs. All hell's breaking loose. So forgive me if I'm redundant or I'm clueless at some point because I'm just dealing with stupidity here.
Or you just need to swing your camera and give us a look at this. This might be entertaining.
This frivolity.
If anybody wants to babysit these animals, please.
My son's a dog trainer. I don't know if he can help you with the cat, though. I don't know if he's worked on dog-cat relations, though. I don't believe so.
We need the help with the dog. The dog's not very stubborn, really likes peeing in the corner still, not very good about house training, but people are not here to hear about these things. We'll talk after the show.
Well, we got David Greenshield serving one up, so we'll send this to Kevin. Back to the defense, and shoot, I'm going to make a simplistic comment, but the linebacking core went from a weakness to a strength in my eyes. I thought those guys were outstanding for the most part last year. And David's saying, what are the chances Knowles plays some 4-3 this year so we can see Tommy and we can see CJ and Steel Chambers on the field together?
Well, I don't think we're going to see them necessarily get away from what it is they do whenever they play a team like the old Wisconsin, not like the current Wisconsin with Luke Fickell and what we're expecting. And they're, you're going against 12 personnel like they were against Georgia, especially before Darnell Washington got hurt. Then yeah, you're going to run more 4-3. But I don't think that you're going to just see a case of where they're going to abandon. Jim Knowles has been a 4-2-5 guy, and they're suddenly just going to say, well, to hell with it. We're going to be 4-3. I mean, sometimes you have to play to what your strengths are, and there are going to be some strengths with what their linebacker core is, but at what point do you get away from what it is that you do? And I think that when you start chasing the dragon like that, that's not a good thing. You need to sit there and, as they say in baseball, play the ball. Don't let the ball play you. And I think they need to go out there with whatever they feel that their best thing is. But if you're going through a year plus of 4-2-5, 4-2-5, 4-2-5, this is what we are, and then you just kind of change it up. What are you at that point? You're just constantly, there's no frame to that building. It just doesn't seem like a good idea to me to get too far away from it.
I also think the 4-3 that you would with Ohio State, The third of the three would be Sonny Styles. So that allows you to still stay in that 4-2-5 where he is an outside linebacker, but can also drop down and be or drop back and be a safety. And so there's still that. I think where you can see Steel Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg and CJ Hicks on the field together is, as Jim Knowles was talking about, they want to look at CJ Hicks in that jack role as well. They're not doing that this spring, but once they break for fall camp and they do that, then they'll look at him there. So you could see those three on the field together. In terms of the top three linebackers, though, I don't see anybody bypassing Cody Simon at this point of Gabe Powers or CJ Hicks. Like Cody Simon is entrenched. He's that number 3 linebacker. He's the number 2 middle linebacker. And if Steel Chambers went down, I would not be surprised at all to see it be Tommy Eichenberg and Cody Simon. But with an athlete like CJ Hicks, do you really want to wait until his junior year before you start using him? So they're going to try to find ways, just like they're trying to find ways with Sonny Styles. So, like I said, the 4-3, if you see it and you look at the opponents that they have, that's where you're going to have to find where will this 4-3 be with the opponents and down and distance. But I think an easy way to settle that is just to have Sonny Styles there, and then you can do whatever you want, basically.
I know I would be in favor of anything that's more simplistic than complicated, meaning that I would rather trust the talent and trust their ability and let them just cut loose. And I'd rather see them get picked apart because the scheme's too simple than see them be confused because they can't figure out and they blow assignments. But again, that's a very simplistic overview, and there's a lot more to it than that for sure. We got Wingman Ted here, getting back to the running back situation. And with everything that Ohio State does, obviously there's a comparison to Michigan, and Michigan's got the two that have been phenomenal and were great last year. Corum for most of the season, then Donovan Edwards, of course, took over after that. And again, exceptional running team, of course. But man, you look at this Ohio State running back room, and people were disappointed because Mayan Williams wasn't healthy and Travion Henderson was a big disappointment. But of course, he was compromised severely. But man, Evan Pryor and Dallan Hayden with those two and on. And you see Chip Tranum and what he did against Michigan. If these guys are healthy and right, man, that room is loaded.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that Evan Pryor could be another guy in that group if he's healthy. So, yeah, it's a crazy good group, no doubt about it.
The interesting thing to me is everybody raves about the year that Michigan had and the down year that Ohio State had. Michigan averaged 5.6 yards a carry, and Ohio State averaged 5.4 yards a carry. And this was viewed as like, oh gosh, what's wrong with Ohio State? And can you believe Michigan's running game? Who can stop them? And it's 0.2 of a yard per carry difference between the two. I don't know if that's the way the two programs are viewed, where it's like, oh, look what Michigan's done. Let's go ahead and put this on the fridge. Where, with Ohio State, they're used to averaging 6 yards a carry. And if you're averaging 5.4, this is not good enough.
One of you sit there too, and just to get to Wingman Ted's question, I mean, Evan Pryor is coming off of a catastrophic injury and still isn't fully back yet. So, I mean, Dallan Hayden, as of now is ahead. And, I think it's going to be a matter of how, Evan Pryor does in his rehabilitation. And we got to see flashes of him in his first season, even though he took the red shirt, I believe, only playing in 4 games where, he was great running the ball, but in blocking, he just didn't have the body yet because he got blown up. So if he is, been able to just sit there and keep mass and everything else and get there, then it's going to be an interesting battle to see between Hayden and Pryor who's going to be the guy. But with the law firm of Henderson, Tranum, and Williams, it's going to be difficult for either of these guys to see a significant amount of touches with those three guys that will be gone probably, in my opinion, after the 23 season, with Williams and with Tranum being seniors and with Henderson being draft eligible and the trend being most backs only doing 3 and gone if given the opportunity to try and get to that second contract in the league.
Well, we're still waiting for more comments and questions. Of course, consider the super chat, folks. Understand that these guys deliver every week for us, and they've got a zillion other things going on. So they put not just the hour into what we do here, but of course, it's more about the for me, the expertise and the insight and the storytelling. Love that as well. Dogs and cats and otherwise. So good stuff out of these three as always. And we'll segue right into that. Kevin, what do you have going on this week?
I mean, right now I'm trying to help on the recruiting side over at Buckeye Huddle. Keep an eye coming off of a big visit weekend. A lot of players from 24, 25, and 26 took part in watching the scrimmage. I mean, obviously Ohio State picked up the commitments of the Armstrong twins. It sounds like there could be some more buzz coming out this week, maybe as soon as today. So really monitoring the recruiting wavelengths right now. But once we get through this week, I think that I'll be able to turn my attention back to the team. We're going to get to see we're going to get to do the whole practice thing again, I guess, tomorrow. I don't even know who it is that we're talking to, but lots of things going on, and maybe I'll get off of my lazy butt and do a Big Me kickoff here soon.
So before we move on to the other two, Kevin, let's settle in right there with the Armstrong twins, because I got to tell you, I was not aware of these two. I'm not a recruiting guy, but by extension of what I do, obviously I'm talking recruiting constantly, but I rely on guys like you. I was completely confused at first glance. I'm like, did somebody misprint? What happened here? Like, I'm looking at all sorts of scanning, their recruiting rankings look almost identical. They're the whole thing. So size up what the Buckeyes were able to pull in this week between the two.
Yeah, they got themselves a tackle and a guard. I mean, the Armstrong twins, I mean, one's a little bit bigger than the other one in terms of height and weight. One of them really kind of and you asked me too quick to remember. It's Deontay and Devontae. So I mean, you sit there and you look quickly and you just think that it's the same guy, and it's not. It's two different guys there. But they come out of Lakewood St. Ed's, which is just a program that consistently churns out fantastic offensive linemen. That's one of the reasons why St. Ed's has been so successful, is just they've been a great development program for linemen, and the Armstrong twins are no different than some of the other greats that have come out of there as well. It's huge because Ohio State's now sitting with 4 offensive linemen in its class, with Mark Nave Jr. out of Toledo and then Ian Moore out of neighboring state Indiana. So, and there we got the 3 Ohioans on the board that Mark just put up there. So Ohio State could potentially take 6 linemen in this class if it's the right 6. Now you can go star hunting at this point. You can sit there and kind of target, the big names that you want to get out of state, because you have a great base of your class right now with Devontae being your interior lineman and Deontay being your offensive tackle. Watching them walk around at the scrimmage, they look even more impressive than they did in terms of like at the camps last year. They filled out a little bit more. I'm not sure if their heights and weights are exactly right at this point. They may have each grown about an inch and maybe put on a couple more pounds. Really, they look like they could have stepped into a rep. I mean, that's what they look like watching them walk around. So I think this is huge for Justin Fry and for offensive line recruiting. We know that there were some misses during the Greg Studrara era. And I'm not here to completely bag on Studrara. I mean, obviously Ohio State was able to get Paris Johnson Jr. and guys like that, but
Donovan Jackson,
exactly. But there were a lot of misses, a lot of guys that maybe were considered plan Bs or whatever. No plan Bs so far in this class, and I think it's going to end up being probably one of the best offensive line classes in quite some time. I don't know if I'm going to be willing to go all the way back to maybe the Brew Crew, but that might be the spot.
Yeah. I like these acquisitions. You watch these guys walk around as they have some different guys, Terwilliger and a couple of the other guys that are on the staff there, kind of leading them around and whatever, showing them different things at the facility. And these two guys, they have smiles on their faces from ear to ear, like they are kids in a candy store at Ohio State. And that's the kind of Ohio talent that the Buckeyes need more of, in my opinion. Guys who want to be there. It means everything to them. And they have tremendous upside. I don't think that they've scratched the surface yet of how good they're going to be. Lakewood St. Edward, I think they were Division I state champs. What's interesting is these two guys are coming to Ohio State, and another guy on their defensive line, Ben Roebuck, another offensive tackle who is 6'7", 320. Think about that. You've got 6'7", 320, Ben Roebuck. Then you got these two guys who are both 6'6" and in the 280, 290 range. I mean, this is like, a Division I college offensive line that St. Ed's is going to trot out there this fall. And they're just, if they don't go 16-0 or 15-1 and win the Division I state championship again, there needs to be a federal investigation, probably, when you talk about this kind of an offensive line. But then I dive in a little deeper. Both these guys are ranked in the 300s nationally, and I think it could go up if they go to some of the national events and show out pretty good this summer in terms of offensive line. But you look at the offer sheet: Boston College, Cincinnati, Georgia, the two-time national champions, had offered at least Deontay, and then all of the Big Ten: Indiana, Michigan State, Penn State, Purdue, Wisconsin. All the Big Ten that matters, at least, had the quality Big Ten had offered these guys. So everybody wanted them. It's a 2-for-1 package, and I think that the sky's the limit for what these guys are going to bring to Ohio State. I dare say could be 2 or 3 year starters, maybe both of them, if they develop properly under Justin Fry's tutelage. And they'll be at the camp this summer. They'll be helping recruit. They'll be doing everything. They're Ohio State guys through and through, and you can't add enough good people. And to me, these guys are good people, it seems like.
Yeah, and I've had somebody in the area tell me that they think Devontae Armstrong, who is listed as a guard, can play tackle. And and people have said the same thing about Ian Moore, their first offensive line commit, who I think is the number 4 interior guy in the nation. People think he can play tackle as well. So they need tackles just to figure out who can man that position. And then if they need to go and move a tackle down to guard, that's what everybody does anyway. So if you can start out with a bunch of tackles, just as Tigris Ebola, they immediately put him at tackle, but then he moved to guard, and now he's back out at right tackle. They're right now Ohio State's searching for their tackles, and if you can get as many as you can early on in recruiting, and then if you have to move them down, oh darn, that's what you want.
Hey, Sue, always good to have you here. We appreciate your contribution. Thank you so much for that. So Sue is asking, how confident are we that one of our right tackles is up to Ohio State standards?
I mean, confidence, that word could be interpreted a lot of different ways at this point. I mean, again, we've seen a scrimmage. We've seen bits and pieces of practices. We don't necessarily know what either Zen Michalski or Tigris Ebola are going to be when under fire. I don't know if we're necessarily going to know coming out of the spring game. I think the biggest indication will be, is Ohio State bringing in another offensive lineman, an offensive tackle from the portal after the spring practice period. I think that will be the tell-all at that point. If they don't do it, it means that they either figure somebody has secured the job, that they're fine with the tandem, that one or the other will get it done, or there's just nothing out there that they like better. At this point, I think Zen Michalski may be a little bit ahead of Tegra. I think it's close, though. It's going to be something to monitor, but I just think that it's going to be a matter of just trying to figure it out. I mean, Ohio State had been very lucky the last couple of years with the tackles that it's had, and it's that OSU standards is a pretty high bar at that point. I mean, while Ohio State has not necessarily gone out and won the Joe Moore Award these last couple of years, Ohio State's been a semifinalist. Ohio State's had some very solid lines, but I think this is going to be a year where you're just going to have to remember it's going to be a couple of first-year starters, at least in terms of Ohio State, at both of the tackle positions, with Fryer at the left and with either Michalski, Shabola, or to be determined at right. But at this point, I can't give an answer that I'm willing to stake my name to, because I just don't know.
Yeah, I think the key is good.
I think some of the good and the bad of being at the scrimmage on Saturday is, the defense sometimes makes a play at the expense of the offense. And I did recall at least one play where it appeared Michalski was being shoved backwards into the quarterback and may have given up a sack. But again, standing on the sideline, not from an overhead viewpoint and not having instant replay, it's kind of hard to figure out, who blew an assignment, what happened. Was he late picking up whoever it was? Was it somebody else's man that he jumped over to try and help on and was out of position? You just don't know all of, and we certainly don't know what the coaches told the players to execute on each given play, what his responsibilities were. So he could be left to look like he's in a bad position and he's really not. So, again, I don't want to say anything. Again, just a small snapshot. Tegritash Bola, to me, and you guys can correct me, I mean, he's not Paris Johnson, but he's kind of Paris Johnson-like with his body size, and maybe that video they put up of Paris Johnson from the pro day where he's, kicking backwards with his footwork for like 30 yards or whatever that was. That was incredible to see somebody do that. I don't think Tashbola or anybody is quite, in that ballpark, but for a big guy, he seems like he's got some pretty good agility. So I wouldn't rule him out of this thing. And, if he's the sixth offensive lineman, I don't think that'd be the end of the world either. So I don't know. What do you guys saw them both up close, and again, not trying to pit one against the other, but I think there's enough good there that that's not going to be something that holds them back from winning big. I don't think.
I think if they could combine the two, they'd have something, because Shabola just being just a big guy when he gets his hands on you, like as a run blocker. Yeah. I saw Kenyatta Jackson get the better of him a couple times on Saturday. You mentioned Zen Michalski having some issues. I mean, that's just life in the Big Ten, life against Ohio State's defensive ends.
Yeah.
But, this is obviously, it's very early. I think the tell, as Kevin said, is watch to see after spring ball, what, May 1st or whatever, when the transfer portal window opens, when you start seeing offensive linemen tweeting out, blessed to receive an offer from Ohio State, and, those guys who are in the portal. Also, let's not forget, Vic Cutler has spent time as a left tackle and a right tackle in his time at Louisiana Monroe. So if they feel good about Carson Hinsman and they feel good about Jacob James as maybe his backup and Josh Padilla as the third guy there, maybe we see Vic Cutler kick out to tackle in the fall if they can't find somebody they like in the portal. And, he's a 6'3" tackle, but if he's better than the other guys, I don't think anybody's going to quibble about him being that short. So if you can't get anybody in the portal and you're concerned, I wouldn't be surprised to see this become a 3-man battle. And at that point, honestly, it may become a free-for-all. Obviously, you've got the two guys that you're looking at, but if you don't think they can do it, then you got to give Luke Montgomery a look. You've got to give George Fitzpatrick a look. Like, you got to start figuring something out if you don't think they can play, because you can't send them out there.
And as you guys have noted before, Cutler's performances, for anybody that's concerned about where he played, his performances against the the name brand teams were extremely strong in those couple opportunities. David Greenshield is asking about one James Peoples, the running back out of Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Veterans Memorial High School. Ohio State seems to have the advantage here. He's a top 100 player and a top 5 running back in the nation. Do we have any thoughts about where that recruitment is headed?
Yeah, I think Ohio State is sitting in a good spot. I know some of the future cast, crystal ball, RPM, whatever, what have you, indicators have been all starting to come in toward Ohio State. And I think that that's how it's going to end up. I mean, just to be that contrarian, David, nobody's signing until December. I mean, these are just still non-binding commitments at this point. Lord, how we know how that works, especially at running back, looking at you, Mark Fletcher, out there. But, I think that one could happen soon, but I also think that the other running back, because this is going to be a 2-back class, and I think Sam Williams-Dixon could happen very soon, who transferred to Pickerington North, who has something like 76 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons. I think both of these backs could end up happening sooner rather than later. I mean, one other back that I really liked Ohio State's chances with for a while, but it's kind of dropped off, Stacey Gage. I'm not sure where that one would stand, but this is, with no scholarship back coming in on 23, they did take Will Hartson. And there goes the dog again. They did bring in Will Hartson last year as a preferred walk-on, a guy that did have scholarship offers elsewhere. It's going to be really important to find two. And as we've seen, you have to find 2 guys that are willing to come in together. But as I mentioned earlier in the show, there really is the opportunity for 3 backs to be gone after this season. So there will be opportunity in 24 and 25 moving on, especially with no back in 23. But I don't have Peoples on my list of happening in the next day or two, but stranger things have happened. But I like Ohio State's shot there.
Where is Williams-Dixon transferring to Pickerington North? Where did he come from?
He came from, I just may or may not have written a story in advance on him. He was somewhere in Holmes County.
Yeah, West Holmes, Millersburg, West Holmes.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, that's what I thought. And I think he's kind of a diamond in the rough guy because, playing that rural, not down talking Ohio high school football, but that you don't see a lot of guys from his league. It's a Division II, Division III, Division IV league. Mid-sized schools, you don't see a lot of guys, and it's also completely, out in the country, for lack of a better term. You don't see a lot of guys from that league, that area, come to Ohio State, but he was a guy who's now going to be playing at a Division I school here, near the Outer Belt, and playing the best of the best week in and week out in the OCC. And now we're going to find out what he's, all about. So it's one thing to rush for, 1,500 yards against, that competition. And that's not to put anything down. I think Stover from Lexington would have played similar, maybe a little bit bigger size school type competition. James Peoples, very intriguing prospect. Our database has him in the 5'10", 195 range. The composite has him as the number 5 running back in the country. That's pretty good by anybody's assessment. Number 69 player overall in the country. Number 15 in Texas, and Ohio State would be beating out 2 SEC powerhouse schools in Oklahoma and Texas for James Peoples. So, to get a player away from those great SEC schools like Oklahoma and Texas, that just kind of says it all. Great track athlete as well. And hurdles, long jump, 200, did a little bit of everything there, and outstanding numbers there as well. So, if Ohio State outlasts them, and I know Kevin and I were talking, I said losing Jordan Marshall hurts a little bit. Everybody down in Cincinnati thought he was a Buckeye. Kevin said, just wait. It's all gonna come out in the wash. So I'll follow Kevin. He knows what he's talking about.
Steve, Tom Orr, co-host of several things, he has been tracking all of the Buckeyes from all of Ohio State's, or all of the counties from Ohio, the counties that have never produced a Buckeye. Holmes County, I think, is one of those because Ohio State does not necessarily recruit the Amish. And so Williams-Dixon moving out of Holmes, I think, still keeps Holmes County from, if he becomes a Buckeye, still keeps Holmes County as one of the, 4 or 5, maybe 3 counties that has never produced a Buckeye to this point.
That's crazy.
Wingman Ted asking, does the depth you alluded to act as a barrier against a solid 2-back class? I don't think so, because as Kevin or Steve said, they're going to be losing 3 guys after this year, most
Trey is
likely.
gone. Mayan is gone.
And so is Chip Trainum as a senior, unless he chooses to come back. But as a COVID year, assuming we're almost out of COVID years. But I don't think at this point, because they're going to be telling them, these guys are all gone at this point.
I'll have to change the name of Holmes County to Mahomes County so they can cross out the M and just kind of X out the entire county when it comes to
Ohio but then it's
State.
Just Hose County.
You don't want that.
Okay. Appreciate y'all being here, talking Ohio State football as usual. We've got the most people on the line at the end of the show. So what you need to do is just wait for the video to post, which should be pretty much instantly. And just go back and watch what you missed. We want to be able to track Steve and Tony and Kevin throughout the week. So, Steve, what do you got on tap for us?
Well, I'm actually going to be gone from tomorrow's interviews. I'm going to Cincinnati for opening day. And, it's not going to be a season that any of us are probably going to want to remember when it's over and done with in 6 months. But I will say this, as a diehard Reds fan and baseball fan, it's been 5 or 6 months through the wilderness. It wasn't that harsh of a winter here, really, other than one really cold week. I never shoveled my driveway, so that was good. But Reds tomorrow, our guy, Hunter Green, who lives at 101 miles per hour, he'll be dealing tomorrow, and looking forward to that. Then on Saturday, we get to watch the student appreciation practice. I assume they're letting the students know what the protocol is for that. But usually they can let 1,000, 2,000 students in to watch practice. And it's kind of a fun thing to kind of connect the football team with the students. And the media gets to usually watch, sometimes even take pictures and videos, which is kind of cool. So looking forward to that. And otherwise, that's most of what we got going on. Basketball finally over with the women's team bowing out. The Power of Ohio State, their game against UConn on last Saturday on ABC was the highest rated Sweet 16 game ever for the women. And the Iowa game that they played in the Elite Eight on ESPN with Caitlin Clark rated better than any NBA game ESPN has shown the entire season. So stop and think about that for a minute. The women's basketball regional final was worth more to ESPN than any NBA game that they've had all season. So this women's movement in 2023 is finally, after 50-some years, is finally taken hold a little bit. But no Buckeyes in the Final Four. They got swept aside by Virginia Tech, and tough loss, but a great year, I think, for McGuff and the Lady Buckeyes.
I'll bypass the latest comment and go to the Reds. I miss the days in which the Reds would start the season ahead of everyone else, even if it was only by a half hour. Major League Baseball would dictate that the Reds had to be the first ones on the field, of course, being the original Red Stockings in 1869.
They still get to open at home. At least they let them open at home every year, so that's good. The traditional National League opener. The
first to play, first to be eliminated.
Tomorrow, the Reds. May 1st, the Bengals.
Now, doggone it.
Tony, what do you got going on?
Before the show, I just dropped a story on Carnell Tate and what Brian Hartline had to say about him, so you can find that at BuckeyeHuddle.com. I am currently updating my ongoing projected 2 deep that I started in January for the Buckeyes. So obviously some changes need to be made. So that'll be on the Huddle message board later this afternoon. Buckeye Weekly Podcast dropped one yesterday. We'll drop another one tomorrow after practice. And, of course, as you said, CFB Playbook, YouTube. You can look for that there. It's more of a national picture type of thing that we're working on.
Kevin, one more time. What do you got?
Yeah, I think I said something about getting off my lazy butt and doing a Big Me kickoff here at some point, but turning my attention to recruiting for the remainder of the week for the most part, just because of Ohio State having the big visit weekend last weekend, and players are still coming to campus here and there. obviously all building up to the spring game, which should be a big recruiting weekend as well. But Armstrong twins are in, and I don't expect that to be the final commitment of the week.
Folks, next up for us, Oklahoma Talk here in a half hour live on the OU channel. So check it out with myself and Jason Ray. Yes, that SEC Power OU. All right. Track these guys, of course. And we'll see you back here for Buckeyes Live next Wednesday.
Boomer!